Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss the chapter on engineering materials. So myself Santosh Kundu, working as assistant professor in Department of Mechanical Engineering in Vivekananda College of Engineering and Technology. We are going to discuss with the first chapter of Module 4, that is nothing but the engineering materials. Here the engineering materials are broadly classified into two types, metals and non-metals. And you already know that the metals are a good conductor of electricity, where non-metals are bad conductors of electricity. Here to discuss or classify, again in metals we have a ferrous metals and non-ferrous metals. Under the ferrous metals we are going to categorize them as pig iron, cast iron, wrought iron and steel. This all comes under the ferrous materials. In non-ferrous materials, we have aluminium, copper, nickel, lead, tin, zinc, gold, silver, etc. These are called as non-ferrous materials. And under the non-metallic materials, we have synthetic materials and natural materials. Synthetic materials are nothing but what we are using in a day-to-day life, that is plastics, ceramics, and composites. And natural materials under the non-metallic materials are wood, rubber, glass, diamond, emery, oil, silicon, etc. We are going to classify under the non-metallic materials. So broadly, we are going to discuss about the engineering materials in this chapter, and we are going to study about the properties of all these materials, that is as concerned to the ferrous, non-ferrous, synthetic and natural materials. We are going to discuss about all the properties of the materials. First, we are going to discuss about the ferrous materials. You all know what is a ferrous material. The most percentage of composition present is the Fe, that is nothing but the iron. So ferrous materials are those materials in which chief constituent is iron. Chief constituent is iron is nothing but it is going to carry out a huge amount of iron content within the material. So in these materials, iron is mixed with carbon, silicon, chromium, nickel, manganese, etc. to form alloys such as steels and cast irons. We are going to manufacture or create a alloy of steels and cast iron by mixing a more percentage of iron in presence of less percentage of carbon, silicon, chromium, nickel, manganese. So we are going to call them as ferrous materials. Ferrous materials are classified into two categories, namely steels and cast irons, based on the carbon content present in them. So based on the percentage of carbon present in the ferrous materials, we are going to classify them as steels and cast irons. So first we are going to study about the steels, later for the cast iron. What is a steel? Steels are those alloys of iron and carbon in which carbon content is less than 2%. Depending upon percentage of other alloying elements, steels are further named as carbon steels, stainless steels and tool steels. Here when you want to categorize a steel, we are going to take the carbon percentage less than 2%. If the any material which has a carbon percentage less than 2%, then we are going to call it as steel. So again we are going to classify it as carbon steel, stainless steel and tool steels. And when you come for a cast iron, here cast irons are those alloys of iron and carbon in which carbon content is 2% to 6.67%. Cast irons are normally produced from cupola furnace. Depending upon the percentage of carbon and other alloying elements, various cast irons are produced. We have different types of cast irons. Later we are going to study about that. But if the carbon percentage present in the material is varying from 2% to 6.67%, we are going to call it as cast iron. Then carbon steels and their classifications. First we are going to study about the steels, that is carbon steels and their classification. Carbon steels are classified based on the percentage of carbon. Again we are going to classify them as based on the carbon percentage. So high percentage of carbon in steel makes it harder and tougher. You should keep it in mind that higher the percentage or level of carbon present in the material, harder and tougher will be the material. So more the carbon, more will be the hardness. Carbon steels are classified into four categories, that is low carbon steel, mild carbon steel, and medium carbon steel and high carbon steel. In low carbon steel, percentage of carbon is 0.05 to 0.15%. In mild steel, that is 0.16 to 0.29% of carbon, and in medium carbon steel, that is 0.3 to 0.59 percentage of carbon, and high carbon steel, that is 0.6 to 1.7% of carbon is present in the material. So this is the brief classification of carbon steels. Then the different types of carbon steels and what we have listed in a previous case. and we are going to show it in terms of the table, that is low carbon steel having percentage 0.05 to 0.15. So the properties of the material are, they are very soft, ductile, very little hardenability, good corrosion resistant, and good welding ability will there for a material. So the applications where we are going to use this low carbon steels are there. We are going to use it in welded or seamless tubes, thin sheets, wire rods, nails, rivets, and stampings. In these all applications, we are going to use the low carbon steel. You might have seen the seamless tubes, thin sheets, and nails. Okay, that we are going to put it in a wall, and rivets. You can see and stampings, staples that you are going to observe, that is made up of low carbon steel 0.05 to 0.15% of carbon. In mild carbon steel or mild steel having a percentage of 0.16 to 0.29, they are very soft, they are ductile, they are little hardenability, and good weldability is there for the mild carbon steel, and we are going to use it in forging, stamping, structural sections, angles, channels, beams, wire rods, ribbed bars, plates, and steel castings. We are going to use this mild carbon steels. Then coming for medium carbon steels, which is having a percentage of carbon as 0.3 to 0.59, it has properties of good strength and ductility, and good hardenability and weldability is there for a material, and they can be hot worked or cold work. Hot working is a process where we are going to heat the material to extreme temperatures, and we are going to make it into a desired product. But in cold working conditions are nothing but in a lower temperature we are going to work the material. So that is nothing but the cold working condition. Applications are drop forging, that is a forging that we have seen, drop forging, plates for boiler drums, marine shafts and axles, high tensile wires and tubes, locomotive wheels, wire roofs, hammers, etc. In these applications we are going to use this medium carbon steel. And when you come for a high carbon steel, it is having a percentage of carbon as 0.6 to 1.7%. It has a good hardenability, ductility, and weldability are very low for this high carbon steel. And for making cutting tools and punches and dies and high strength rails, we are going to use this high carbon steels. So we should remember, higher the percentage of carbon, higher will be the hardness of a material. Then comes the wrought iron, the second form of iron. So we are going to call this wrought iron as it is the purest form of iron, which contains 99.8% of iron and produced by melting pig iron in puddling furnace. So in wrought iron, it's a raw form of iron which is very pure and contains 99.8% of iron. We are going to call it as wrought iron. Cast iron. Next is cast iron is produced by melting a pig iron. Whatever we have seen previously, that pig iron, when you melt it, you are going to get a cast iron. We are going to use the cupola furnace and induction furnace we are going to use, and the chemistry of a pig iron is suitably modified in cupola furnace to produce different grades of cast iron. Again, when you again heat this pig iron to produce the different grades of cast iron in a cupola furnace, so that more amount of or more varieties of cast iron can be produced. And first, cast iron. The properties of a cast iron are, it is having low tensile strength, good compressive strength, and good corrosion resistance is there for a cast iron. And cast irons are very brittle and have no plasticity. As a result, they cannot be forged. They have a no plastic nature is present in the cast iron, and they are very brittle, right? Very brittle in the sense they are going to break at a faster rate, and again they cannot be forged. We cannot force it, and we can't make it into a different shape, that is a cast iron. And it has self-lubricating properties due to a presence of free carbon, and is therefore used for making surfaces over which sliding takes place, such as lathe bed, where we have studied already the chapter of lathe, where there we are going to come across with a lathe bed. So that in the lathe beds are made up of cast iron, so that it is having self-lubricating property. Self-lubricating property in the sense it is not going to create any friction there. So we due to the self-lubricating property of the material of a cast iron, we are going to use it in sliding surfaces. That's the self-lubricating can be achieved by a free carbon particles present in the cast iron. So the different types of cast iron are grey cast iron. Is that grey cast iron are, in this cast iron most of the carbon is present in the form of free graphite. In the grey cast iron, we are going to observe more number of free graphite is present, and this is visible in the form of flakes. So that the flakes in the form of flakes are present in the gray cast iron, that is nothing but a graphite. If a piece of this material is broken, its fractured section shows the grayish color. So that whenever you break a cast iron, the gray cast iron, we are going to observe a grayish color due to the presence of flake form of the graphite. The gray color is due to the presence of free carbon in the form of graphite flakes. So in gray cast iron, the carbon content is combined to form, that is Fe3C, that is nothing but a cementite, may vary from 0.3% to 0.9% of carbon. We are going to call Fe3C as the cementite. And properties of gray cast iron, it has a very good properties of a gray cast iron. So it is very brittle and possesses ductility, plasticity. As a result, it cannot be forged. So it is very brittle, we can't forge it. So high brittleness makes it unsuitable for making parts where they are subjected to shock loading. So where there are more number of vibrations on sudden shock loading, we are not going to use this type of for materials, that is gray cast iron. It has a good machinability. Machining can be done easily in the gray cast iron, and it has a good compressive strength of 1250 kg per square centimeter, and a low tensile strength of 650 kg per square centimeter is there in the gray cast iron. It has a good feasibility, which makes it suitable for making castings. It has a good fusible in nature, and it is used for making casting. Due to a presence of free graphite, it has self-lubricating property. Since the free graphite is present in the form of flakes, it has a self-lubricating property of a material is there for the gray cast iron. Okay, in this slide we have discussed. Going for the next slide, that is white cast iron. White cast iron, it is also called as white cast iron because it is all usually whitish in color, and most of the carbon is present in the form of cast iron is in the combined form. When we look for a gray cast iron, it is in the graphite form, that is in the form of flakes. But here in white cast iron, it is in the combined form, where iron carbide, which is called as a cementite, is present as a most of the content in the white cast iron, and cementite is in white in color and makes the structure white. Since this Fe3C or iron carbide is present in more amount, so we are going to call this cast iron as a white, because this cementite is the material responsible to get a white color for the white cast iron. Cementite is very hard and brittle, and cementite is formed due to a rapid cooling of iron after melting. It is due to this reason that all the chilled parts of castings are hard and brittle. So white cast iron, usually it will be very hard and brittle, because directly whenever we are taking out the iron from the pig iron, that is a melting of iron, directly we are going to cool it. So cementite will deposit more at that particular time, and it will be very hard and brittle. White cast iron is hard and brittle and highly wear resistant, and its fluidity is not good and is not suitable for general casting purpose. The fluidity or the ability to flow easily is not good for white cast iron. Then the third one is malleable cast iron. It is fairly good amount of malleability. It is produced in two steps. First, cast iron castings are produced by melting white cast iron in cupola furnace. These castings are packed in iron boxes containing the material rich in O2. These boxes are kept for 4 days in annealing furnaces at a temperature of 815 to 1010 degrees Celsius, and then allowed to cool slowly along with the furnace. This allows cementite to decompose into iron and carbon. That type of cast iron, we are going to call it as malleable cast iron. Here we are going to follow the process of annealing. Next comes the alloy steels. Alloy steels are nothing but the derivatives of the steel, we can call. All steels, in addition to iron and carbon, contain other elements like silicon, manganese, sulfur, and phosphorus.
So in some steels, special elements like nickel, chromium, molybdenum, vanadium, and tungsten, etc., are added to enhance their mechanical properties. These steels are called as alloy steels. Alloy steels, they have their properties as per the alloying elements in them. These steels are named normally on the basis of their principal alloying elements. Then comes the stainless steel. Stainless steels, they are corrosion resistant steels. Their principle of alloying element is a chromium, while the other elements like nickel, manganese can also be present in small amount. The most of the element is principal alloying element, that is chromium, and other elements like nickel, manganese are also included in the stainless steel. To impart high corrosion resistant to steels, chromium up to 12% is added. More percent amount of chromium, that is 12%, is added to get the good form of a stainless steel, that is having a more property of more resistance property for corrosion. The chromium present in steels reacts with O2 in air to form a strong layer of chromium oxide on the surface of the metal. This layer protects the metal from corrosion. Stainless steels carrying more than 12% chromium are known as true stainless steel. Most of the stainless steels that you are observing, it is carrying 12% chromium, that is more than 12% chromium, so that higher the chromium, higher will be the corrosion resistant, we can say that. Then the tool steel, these alloy steels have special application in manufacturing of cutting tools. For those applications where tools made of carbon steel will either fail or perform or will have a very short life, they are put into two categories, namely high speed steels and the high speed steels. High speed steels, it is a high alloy tool steel used for making cutting tools, suitable for high temperature applications. The cutting tools, we are going to call it as a high speed steel and a carbon steel. High speed steel are the alloy tool steels used for making cutting tools suitable for high temperature applications. Main constituents in high speed steel are carbon, tungsten, chromium, vanadium, and molybdenum. Here it will be having a properties of high speed steel has higher wear resistance, high absorption resistance, and high red hardness. They retain their hardness up to 620 degree Celsius. The most commonly used high speed carbon steel is 1841. This is the composition of a HSS, which carries 18% of tungsten, 4% of chromium, and 1% of vanadium, and 0.7% of carbon, and rest is the iron. So this is the constituent of a high speed steel. It has a good red hardness, wear resistance, shock resistance, and widely used for making cutting tools for lathe, shapers, lotters, milling machines, drilling, etc. Next comes the non-ferrous metals. Non-ferrous metals are those which do not contain iron. If the iron percentage is less or zero in the materials, we are going to call it as non-ferrous metals. Most commonly used non-ferrous metals are aluminum, copper, magnesium, lead, tin, nickel, zinc. Also, they form useful alloys among themselves. First one is copper. The properties and the usage of copper are as follows. It is having high electrical conductivity. It is used to make the cables and uh, cables and contactors. Right, contactors means the electrical connectivity or electrical conductivity from one form of element to the other form. So that to make the connectivity, we are going to use the copper. High heat conductivity, used in heat exchangers, heating vessels, and appliances. And good corrosion resistant, used to provide base coating on steel prior to nickel and chromium plating. High ductility is there, can be easily cold worked, rolled, drawn, and spun. Losses uh, ductility loses ductility in cold working, requires annealing between the process. So whenever you are going to do the cold work of a copper, it is going to lose its property, that is the ductility property of a copper will be reduced in the cold working condition. At that time, proper annealing has to be done for a material. Then comes the zinc. Properties and usage of zinc are: it is high corrosion resistant. It is widely used for providing protective coating on iron and steel. We are going to use it as a coating material for iron and steel. It may be coated either by dip galvanizing, electroplating, shearodizing, or by just painting. These are the methods of applying a zinc coating over the iron and steel. Low melting point and high fluidity. It is having very low melting point and higher fluidity is there, makes it most suitable for pressure die casting. In most of the pressure die casting, we are going to use the zinc. Next comes tin properties and usage of tin. Good resistance to acid corrosion is the main property of a tin, are used as coating on steel container for food. It is soft, has good plasticity and can be easily worked. It can be easily rolled into thin foils but cannot be drawn into wires due to a low strength. It is used as alloying element in soft solders, bronzes and bearing metals. Next is the magnesium, properties and usage of magnesium. It is the lightest metal we are going to call, and weighing two-thirds of aluminum. It is very lightweight than that of the aluminum. We are going to compare the magnesium with the aluminum, that is it is weighing very less, that is two-thirds of the aluminum. It can be easily cast into fine shapes. It has a good ductility, so it can be easily cold worked. When in powder form, it is likely to catch fire, requiring adequate fire protection measures for its shortage. In a powder form, the magnesium has to be used with the utmost care, and fire protection measures has to be taken for its storage. Next is lead. Properties and usage of lead is good corrosion resistant is there for the lead, used for water pipes and roof protection. We are going to use the lead. Good resistance to chemical action, used for acid baths and containers in chemical industry. It's a soft, heavy and malleable and can be easily worked and shaped. Used as alloying element in making solders. It is alloyed with brass and steel to impart them free cutting properties. So these are the properties and usage of the lead. Next is the aluminum. Properties and usage of aluminum are, here aluminum has high electrical conductivity. It is used for heavy conductors and bus bars. High heat electrical conductivity, high heat conductivity property is also there for aluminum, used in domestic utensils and other heat conducting appliances, like what we are going to use the aluminum vessels in the kitchen. Good resistance to corrosion, used for manufacture of containers for chemical industry. So it is a good resistance to corrosion is there for aluminum, so we are going to use as a containers in the chemical industry and window frames, etc. The corrosion resistance can be further enhanced by anodizing. So we can still increase the corrosion resistivity of aluminum by the anodizing process. That is the process of increasing the thickness of natural oxide layer on the metal surface. It is done through electrolysis. Metal forms anode of electrical circuit. So anodizing is a process where we are going to increase the corrosion resistance property of aluminum. That is it is having a, we are, only thing is we are going to increase the thickness of the natural oxide layer on the aluminum surface. Next is nickel. Properties and usage of nickel are good resistance to both acid and alkali corrosion is the property of nickel. These are widely used for food processing equipments, has high tensile strength and can be easily hot or cold worked. It is having very high tensile strength property. It is placed on steel to provide corrosion resistant surface. So if they want to protect the steel from the corrosion, we are going to apply the nickel coating on top of the stainless steel. Next is brass and bronze. Brass, these are the alloy of copper and zinc. To call the brass as the alloy of copper and zinc, and bronze as they are alloys of copper and tin, we are going to call. Then advantages of non-ferrous metals are, non-ferrous metals have following advantages over ferrous materials, right? So the very good advantages are very good electrical and thermal conductivity is there for the non-ferrous materials, and good castability is there for non-ferrous materials over the ferrous metal, and good formability, good code working property is there for non-ferrous metals. High corrosion resistance property is there for non-ferrous materials. Attractive appearance is there for non-ferrous materials. Lower density and high strength to weight ratio is there for non-ferrous materials. So these are the various advantages we are going to have for a non-ferrous materials over the ferrous materials. Then disadvantages of non-ferrous materials are, they are very costly, high shrinkage is there for a non-ferrous material, lower strength at elevated temperature. Whenever you are using non-ferrous materials for at higher temperature, we are going to lower its strength of the material. So that is the main disadvantage of the non-ferrous material. So this by this slide we are going to end the chapter of engineering materials. That is a small topic in the first chapter. So next we are going to uh, deal with the composite materials. Okay, next part is the discussion on the composite materials. So we know the what is a composite material. You might be using it in day-to-day life. The composites are playing a very important role in day-to-day life, and most of the things that we are using are made up of the composite materials. After learning this chapter, you will be getting what are composites and how they are being replacing the ferrous and non-ferrous materials. We are going to study that. So first we are going to go for a definition of a composite. A composite is defined as a material which is a combination of two or more dissimilar materials which have different interfaces between them, and resulting material properties are enhanced compared to the individual constituent materials. Okay, the definition of a composite is very simple. It is a material, or it is a material element that is formed by, or it is a material that is formed by a combination of two or more dissimilar materials. Whenever you mix two or more dissimilar materials, we are going to form one composite, and that two dissimilar materials will be having different interfaces between them, and the resulting material properties are enhanced for a composite and compared to the individual constituent materials. So whenever you use two different materials, when you combine them, it is going to increase its properties, material properties. So that form of element we are going to call it as the composite. The main constituent of a composite are reinforcement and the matrix. There are two components always we are going to use, that is the reinforcement material and the matrix material. These two we are going to combine together and we are going to prepare a composite. For an example, glass reinforced plastic component. Glass reinforced plastic component is nothing but the glass is the reinforcement material. Here is the reinforcement material, and the polyester resin is the matrix. Here we are going to use the glass as the reinforcement material, and polyester resin is the matrix material in this particular glass reinforced plastic component. And reinforcement can be in any form, such as rods, fibers and particles. Reinforcement that you are going to use in the composite material, it may be in the form of rods, it may be in the form of fibers, it may be in the form of particles. So the clear picture indicates what is the composite material here. The different components of a composite material are, this is the rod or that we are using, that is a reinforcement, and this element is a matrix, right? So this is a matrix. So when this matrix is combined with a reinforcement, we are going to call it as a composite material. This is very simple. For an example, I am going to take a sponge. You have seen a sponge, I think you have seen a sponge. So I'm going to take a example of a sponge here. This sponge, whenever I apply a huge load on that, it is going to bend, or it is whenever I hold two ends of it, and whenever I am going to bend it, it is going to bend. Now what I am going to do, I am going to take a reinforcement material that is in the form of toothpicks. That toothpicks I am going to insert it within the sponge layer. I'm going to insert it within the sponge layer. So at that time, what will happen? Now I am going to apply the same load, and I am going to hold two ends of the sponge, and I am going to bend it. Now I can't bend it easily because two pegs have given a more strength for the matrix material. So this reinforcement, when it combines with the matrix, we are going to get a composite, and the properties of this composite material are different, right? So it is going to improve its properties. So that is the best example I can give for a composite. Then the functions of reinforcement. If we use a reinforcement, what will happen? So contributing the desired properties, the desired properties of a component will be increased. It is carrying the load. The reinforcement will carry the huge amount of load, transferring the strength to the matrix. So always the reinforcement will be transferring the strength to the matrix material. So in the sponge, the toothpicks have given a more amount of strength for the sponge. The functions of the matrix now, that is the sponge, how it works. It holds the fibers together. All the fibers are holded together in a accurate manner, distributing fibers properly. Evenly, the fibers are going to be distributed in the matrix, distributing loads evenly between the fibers, protecting the fibers from environment and abrasion. So the fibers are going to be protected at the outer layer from the matrix, so it won't be affected with the environment or the abrasion wear, providing good surface finish to the product. It is going, the matrix is going to provide a good surface finish for the reinforcement material. So that is the functions of the matrix. Then what is the best advantages of a composite material? Here, first one, it is very important, that is the non-corrosive and resistant to chemical agent. The composite material, it is highly non-corrosive and it is resistant to chemical agent. It won't react with the chemical agents easily, and it is very light in weight. This is also a best advantage we can say for composite material. And outstanding strength to weight ratio, that is the weight is very less, and possess good resilience and good thermal properties, hence they are good insulators. The thermal properties of the composite material is also good, hence they are good insulators also. Innovative designs can be achieved without loss in the strength. Various designs we can make it through a composite material, but the strength of the material will not be in loss. Then disadvantages of composite material are fabrication cost design. Since the reinforcement we are going to use and the matrix material we are going to use, fabrication cost becomes higher in a disadvantages, and repairing is not simple as it requires original curing temperature, pressure and tooling. So repair, whenever you want to repair a composite material, it can't be repaired easily. So it needs an environment that during the manufacturing. So the same environment has to be followed during the repair also. Flaws and cracks may go undetected. There might be a cracks, internal cracks and the flaws in the internal defects that will be undetected in the composite material. Raw materials are costly. The matrix in the composite are subjected to environmental degradation. So the composite materials that you are going to use, but it is non-biodegradable, so environment degradation is a problem, and mechanical properties changes in different directions. Here the mechanical properties are going to vary in different directions. That is the disadvantage of composite material. Then where are the application, what are the applications of composite materials and where all it is going to be used? We are going to use it in aircraft industries because it is very lighter in weight. So in aircraft industry we are going to make it use to make use of these components, that is fuselage, wing, seats. To make all these components we are going to use the we are going to use the composite materials to save weight over aluminum parts. Automobile industries, that is doors, heads, leaf springs etc., can be made to make vehicle lighter, safer and fuel efficient. Sports equipment like tennis racket, golf stick, hockey sticks and light boards we are going to use in the sports equipment, and that can be made by a composite material. Construction industries like kitchenware, trimmings, decorative panels can be done by composite material, and wind energy applications like wind turbine blades can also be made by composite material. Military applications like submarines, armed vehicles, bullet-proof vests can also be made by composite material. Biomedical applications are artificial joints, and dental application. Even in dental application, we are going to use the composite material, and in marine application like boat hulls, ship structure, etc., we are going to use the composite materials. Then next comes the classification of composite materials. It has been classified into different categories. That is, the first one, it is based on the matrix material. Based on the what matrix material we are going to use, it is classified as metal matrix, ceramic matrix and polymer matrix. Metal matrix is called as MMC, ceramic matrix is called as a CMC, and polymer matrix is called as PMC. Based on the reinforcement material structure, what type of reinforcement we are going to use, those are classified into particulate composite, fiber reinforced composite and laminate composites. So for in particular components we are going to use the particles of a reinforcement, and in fiber reinforced composite again it is going to classify into continuous fiber reinforced composite and discontinuous fiber reinforced composite. If the fibers are continuous, we are going to call it as continuous fiber or long fibers. Discontinuous fibers, Again, we are moving to classify into two categories, that is discontinuous fibers with aligned fibers. The discontinuous fibers, that is short fibers, we are going to align it carefully, that is discontinuous with aligned. And discontinuous with randomly oriented fibers are nothing but there are short fibers but they are not arranged in a correct manner. And next one is the laminate composite, that is layer by layer like a bread and jam arrangement. We are going to arrange the composite materials, right? So that is a laminate composite. One by one we are going to study in the next slides. First one is the metal matrix composite. MMC contains at least two components, of which one is the metal and the other component may be a metal or ceramic or organic compound. In MMC, one should be a metal, one element should be a metal, and the other reinforcement material may be in any form. That may be a ceramic, or that may be a metal, or that may be in any organic compound also. So we are going to call it as a metal matrix composite. Example: matrix material is aluminum, magnesium, copper, and ceramics is oxides and carbides we can use, and metallic phase is lead, tungsten we are going to use, and you combine these things, we are going to get a metal matrix composite. Okay, and MMC has high operating temperature. Always the MMCs will be having high operating temperature, greater wear resistance, and high specific strength is there for MMC, and they are used in manufacturing of pistons or for diesel engines. We are going to use the manufacturing of pistons in the diesel engines. Ceramic matrix composites, the second one, we are going to call it as CMC. CMC are composed of a ceramic matrix and embedded fibers of ceramic material in the dispersed phase. So in ceramic matrix composite, the main matrix element is a ceramics, and we are going to embed that ceramics in the fibers of ceramic material in the dispersed phase. Dispersed means that is the fibers are dispersed overall the overall matrix. So usually represented as fiber type or matrix type of composite materials. Example: C bar SiC, carbon bar silicon carbide, carbon fibers in silicon carbide matrix. We are going to call it as ceramic matrix composite. Properties are: good corrosion resistance is there for ceramics, high compressive strength, high mechanical strength, and high temperature bearing capacity is there for ceramic matrix composite. Where are we are going to use the CMCs? That is the disc brakes of a vehicle. We are going to use the CMC. Nose of the space shuttle. We are going to use the CMC. Blades of the gas turbine. We are going to use the CMC. Ceramic matrix composite. One other best example is your wash basin. In your home, we are going to use the wash basins. That is nothing but a ceramic component, and many of the decorative items are also made up of ceramic components. The third one is polymer matrix composite, that is nothing but PMC. PMC contain a matrix of thermoset or thermoplastic material are embedded fiber of glass, carbon, steel or silver in dispersed phase. In polymer matrix composite, we are going to use thermoset or a thermoplastic material as a matrix, and we are going to embed that one, or we are going to use that thermoset or thermoplastic matrix in the fibers like glass, carbon, and steel, or silver fibers can also be used in PMCs. That is a thermoset and thermoplastic matrix. So thermoset is unsaturated polyester or epoxy, we are going to say, and thermoplastic is polycarbonate or nylon. So these are the thermoset and thermoplastic materials we are going to use. And properties of PMC are those weight is very less and provides high strength along the direction of reinforcement. This is very important. Whenever along the direction of the reinforcement, we are going to have a higher strength. So whenever we need a longitudinal reinforcement, alignment, we can do it, or horizontal reinforcement transverse way of reinforcing the material can also be achieved by this PMC. PMC provides good corrosion and fatigue resistance compared to the metals. So polymer matrix composite provides good corrosion resistance and fatigue resistance compared to the metals. PMC are ideally suitable for automobile and aerospace industries. PMCs are very much suitable in the automobile and aerospace industries. Then next one is particulate composite. Particulate composite consists of particles. Particulates are nothing but these are the particles, small particles which we are going to mix it with the matrix. Particles embedded in a body of the matrix. Particle size will be varying less than 0.25 microns, and particles provide reinforcement to the matrix material, and particles can be in the form of flakes, powder, chopped fibers, etc. Example are coarse rock, gravel in a matrix of cement. So you might be knowing about the concrete structure. So to prepare a concrete, we are going to mix the cement, sand, as well as the rock gravels. So that we are going to mix them, and we are going to create a matrix of cement. So that is a example for particulate composite used to manufacture cell phone casing, helmets, cutting tools, pistons. So this is the figure which shows the particulate composite. This is a matrix material, white color, and circles we are going to observe it as particles. Fiber reinforced composite FRC consists of axial particles in the form of fibers embedded in a matrix material. Fibers may be in the form of metal, ceramics, or glass fibers can be used. When carbon fibers are embedded in a matrix, FRC are called as carbon fiber reinforced matrix. So whenever carbon fibers are reinforced in a matrix, we are going to name them as carbon fiber reinforced composites, that is CFRC. There are two types of FRCs: continuous fiber reinforced composite, discontinuous fiber reinforced composite. So discontinuous and aligned fibers, discontinuous and randomly oriented fibers. So this classification we have seen in previous slides. Then applications are racing bicycle frame and car body parts can also be made by this FRC. So fiber reinforced composite can be explained in this figure. So we have a continuous and aligned fiber. So long length fibers we can expect here. And in next figure, discontinuous and aligned fibers. There are discontinuous short fibers, but they are aligned properly. So this is called as a second type of FRC. And in third type of FRC, there are very short length of fibers where there will be having a random orientation. We are not going to align the short fibers in a clear manner, longitudinal or transverse. So this is called as a discontinuous and randomly oriented fibers. Next, the one is a laminate composite. When a fiber reinforced composite consists of several layers with a different fiber reorientation, it is called as a laminate composite or a multi-layer composite. The best example is the plywoods that you are going to use it in a home. So instead of wooden material, we are going to make a suitable use of a plywood material, where whenever you observe the cut section of the plywood, there are different layers can be observed. One is a matrix layer and one is the reinforcement layer for a composite, and different laminates, layers of woodens are kept over one above the other. It's a very simple example. We can say that's a bread and jam arrangement, where one bread is kept and on top of that we are going to apply the jam, and another bread is kept on that, and again we are going to apply jam, and another bread is kept. So that bread we are going to call it as a laminate layers, which are kept one above the other. So it is a multi-layer composite. Examples are fibers. The fibers that we are going to use in the laminates, that is a glass, graphite, and silicon carbide we are going to use. And matrix has epoxy, alumina, and titanium, etc. We are going to use it as a matrix. The layers arranged in different directions provide strength in that particular direction. The layers, if you arrange it in longitudinal direction, we are going to get a strength in a longitudinal way. If you are going to arrange the fibers in a transverse manner, then we are going to have a transverse strength at a maximum extent. So the layers are arranged in different directions to provide strength in that particular direction. Example are carbon sandwich composite and plywoods are best example for laminate composite. And applications for a laminate composite, as we are going to use it in furnitures, to make furnitures and aircraft body we are going to use the laminate composites. And next, this is the example of a laminate composite, where layers of different layers of matrix we are going to use. This is build direction, this laminate plate direction, and how many layers you want, that thickness can be increased by putting the another laminate layers. So this completes the sub chapter on the composite materials. Next concept in this chapter is smart materials. Okay, that the materials that are behaving, yeah, as a smart, that are behaving very smart, so that changes according to the pressure or temperature. The materials that are going to change according to pressure and temperature, that we are going to call it as a smart materials, and their properties we are going to study in this subchapter. So introduction are properties of everyday materials cannot be altered. The properties of material cannot be altered every day. There is a need for materials whose properties can be altered. Some of the materials can alter their properties, so we are going to identify that type of materials and we are going to call them as the smart materials. There is a need for material to change the properties for different requirements. Okay, depend on the requirement, the material has to change its structure or change its property. So that type of materials we are going to call it as smart materials. There is a need for smart materials to acquire these 3 points. So we are going to identify some of the smart materials and we are going to study the properties of that smart materials. So the definition is materials which have ability to change shape or phase due to the application of heat, magnetic field or electric field. We are going to call it as smart material. So what the properties of a material is going to change, which has the ability to change its shape or phase due to the application of heat. We are going to call it as a smart materials. Whenever you apply the magnetic field or electric field to a material, it is going to change its shape and phase. That type of material we are going to call it as the smart material. Each individual type of smart material has a different properties. So they are also called as responsive materials. We are going to call these smart materials as responsive materials. Whenever you give the electric field or magnetic field for them, they are going to respond back or revert back. So we are going to call it as responsive materials. Variety of smart materials exist, such as Nithinol, lead, zirconate, and titanate, ceramics, polymers, etc. So the various smart materials are the nithinol, lead, zirconate, titanate, ceramics, and polymers. These are the various smart materials exist in nature. So the classifications of these smart materials are, these are electroactive smart materials, that is piezoelectric materials, and electro-rheological fluids. We are going to call it as electroactive materials. And thermoactive materials are shape memory alloys, and magnetoactive materials are magnetorheological fluids, and magnetostrictive materials are the magnetoactive materials. These are all the smart materials, and one by one we are going to study them. And electroactive materials, that is the piezoelectric material, we are going to say it requires an voltage input of voltage to change. So whenever you provide the voltage to a material, piezoelectric material, it is going to change. So they are generally made of polymers such as polyvinyl fluoride. These piezoelectric materials are made up of the polyvinyl fluoride material, and electrostriction, where shape change produced without input of electricity. We are going to change this shape, or change of shape is produced with input of electricity. Whenever we apply electricity for the material, it is going to change its shape. So piezoelectric effect is electricity is produced with input of shape change. So in a piezoelectric effect, we are going to have a electricity is produced with input of shape change. Whenever there is a change in shape of the material, we are going to produce the electricity. So these are the piezoelectric materials. And applications of piezoelectric materials are often used to measure force of an impact. Whenever there is a power hammering concept, we are going to use this to measure the force of an impact. Example, airbag sensor in cars, which senses the force of an impact and sends electric charge deploying the airbag. So in the airbags, we are going to use this electric material. So piezoceramic is there here, electrical source. Whenever we connect it, we are going to supply the electrical energy. Here electrical current is off, here electrical current is on. Now it is going to change its shape and size, and again it is going to indicate the required element. Next, the magneto or electro-rheological fluids. These are in the form of fluids. Rheological behavior, phase change from fluid to solid. So then the rheological behavior, it is going to change its phase from the liquid phase to solid. Changes in viscosity, plasticity and elasticity. Effect can be reversed when a field is removed. So whenever the electric field is removed, again the solid form of element is going to convert it into liquid form. These are called as MR fluid. MR means magnetorheological fluids, changes in magnetic field, and electrorheological fluids, changes in electric field. Variable control of damping, motion and position control are there in these type of fluids. Then applications of for magnetorheological fluids. This is the MR fluid damper is there here. That is a three-stage piston and thermal expansion accumulator, and this is the magnetic flux. At this particular level, whenever there is MR fluid, that is magnetorheological fluid is present, so whenever there is a magnetic flux is interacting with this the piston motion, then it is going to send the signals with the dampers. So this is buildings equipped with the MR fluid dampers. So these dampers are going to be actuated, and again they are going to send the signals to the required element. So this is about the application of MR fluid in dampers. Then the thermoactive materials, that is nothing but a shape memory alloys. Materials after strained return to the original shape after heating. So that is called as shape memory alloys, and exhibit shape memory effect and pseudo elasticity. They are going to exhibit a shape memory effect and pseudo elasticity. Works due to a change in phase, namely austenite and martensite phase can be obtained in shape memory alloys. And example are NiTi, CuZnEl, CuNiEl, CuTi, etc. So you can observe one figure here. Whenever you are applying the weight, the spring will elongate and again it is going to contract. So this is nothing but a shape memory alloys. Then shape memory effect observed when alloy is composed of martensite. Original shape required by heating, which forms austenite, that is original phase. For this, to remember austenite, martensite and all, you need to say about the material science, but since you are first year, you just remember those words. So here, when you plot a graph of load versus temperature, we have a austenite. Whenever we cool it, we are going to obtain a twinned martensite, and whenever we load it, so we are going to obtain the deformed martensite, and whenever you heat it, again we are going to get the austenite phase. So that is the change of the shape. Then next one is pseudo elasticity. These occur when alloy is composed of austenite. Whenever there is a more amount of austenite is present in the alloy, this can be obtained. Occurs without change in temperature. This can be occurring without the change in the temperature, and there will be a phase change from austenite to martensite always. There will be a change from austenite to martensite. Then applications of shape memory alloys are spectacle frames. For spectacle frames, we are going to use the shape memory alloy. Pipe jointing systems, temperature control systems, aerospace and marines, we are going to use the shape memory alloys. And magnetoactive elements. Magnetostrictive materials, they are ferromagnetic materials which experience an elastic strain when subjected to magnetic field. Whenever we subject a magnetic field or a magnetic field to a material, it is going to obtain the elastic strain. The strain can be obtained in magnetostrictive materials, and they are expand when exposed to a magnetic field. Whenever we expose it to a magnetic field, we are going to expand it. Okay. The ferromagnetic materials which experience an elastic strain when subjected to a magnetic field. Whenever you subject material to a magnetic field, it is going to undergo with the elastic strain. So we are going to have a magnetostrictive material. So they are going to expand when exposed to a magnetic field. Whenever we are going to expose it to a magnetic field, the materials are going to expand, and compressed when magnetic energy changes. So whenever the magnetic field goes on reduces, it is going to change its phase or change its property. So that is which is compressed when magnetic energy changes, and operate at higher temperature. These magnetostrictive materials are going to operate at higher temperature, and usage of magnetostrictive materials is limited. We are going to have a very limited use of this magnetostrictive materials. And ceramics in IC engine. In IC engines, we are going to IC engines we are going to make that IC engine components with the help of ceramics. So the properties of ceramics are it can withstand the properties of ceramics are it can withstand acids, high temperature, and salts. So in the ceramic matrix composites, we have studied that it can withstand the chemical reactivity, right? So that no chemical reactions are going to occur in ceramics component. So it can withstand acids, high temperature, and salts. And if there is a ceramic engine, if you produce an engine with a ceramics, there will be no lubrication, no lubrication can be done. Then in properties of ceramics, it has a good insulator, right? We are going to say that ceramic is a good insulator. They are extremely hard. Ceramics has a property of high hardness, low friction, and expansion coefficient. The ceramics are are having a very less friction, and expansion coefficient is there. Relatively light. Ceramics are lighter in weight, more abundant in nature. Ceramic is available in abundant in nature, so plenty of ceramics is available, but expensive than other methods. So we are going to have expensive form of a method when you use a ceramic as a IC engine. So if ceramics engines, if you do the engine by ceramics, so what will happen? There will be no lubrication. No lubrication can be done for a ceramics, and no cooling effect is needed, and 150% more power can be obtained for a ceramic IC engine. Less wear and tear is there, and 75% less fuel consumption is there in ceramic IC engine. No pollution, 50% less weight is there for a ceramics, and adaptable to any fuel. It can Ceramic engines are adaptable to any type of fuel like petrol, diesel, or gases. But the main disadvantage is it is very brittle. So that is the main disadvantage of ceramics. Then the conclusion of smart material is smart materials are becoming feasible because the ease of embedding devices in laminated structure. So the smart materials are very much feasible because the embedding devices in laminated structures are very much easier. Exploitation of material coupling such as between mechanical and electrical properties. We are going to have a exploitation of material couplings such as between the mechanical and electrical properties are there. And again, advances in microelectronics, information processing, and sensor technology. These are smart materials are very much feasible because we have very much advances in microelectronics, information processing, and sensor technology, and advancement in IC engines field using ceramics. So by using smart materials, we can advance the IC engines field by using the ceramics. So the smart materials are becoming very much feasible. So this completes the chapter on engineering materials. So the engineering materials includes the different types of ferrous and non-ferrous materials, and followed by the composite materials, and followed by the